Good evening and welcome to something beginning with K. So I've been doing what I like to think of as an ABC challenge this year. I've been trying to work through all the books on my to read shelf. Well, not all of them, that'll take a lifetime. But I'm trying to read alphabetically by author's name, ABC, etc. And that way I thought I'd distribute my reading a little bit more instead of bunching in one area. As you can see, and this is just one shelf, there's a fair bit on the to read shelves. I'm up to K, something beginning with K. And as you will have seen from the thumbnail, I'm reading The Disappearance of Mr. Allan by Foster Kennedy, illustrated by Bill Russell. So yes, I am the omnivorous reader. I read on many different genres, and I actually do quite like kids' books, specifically vintage kids' books. Now, some modern kids' books are pretty good as well, and there's a lot of books that are registered as children's books, which I feel like are aimed at adults. However, a lot of modern ones seem to me a bit samey, whereas if you go into the vintage region, let's go with era, 60s and 70s, a lot of these stories are pretty damn good and unusual and divergent in different ways, which you don't see as much anymore. If you go further back into the Edwardian and the Victorian, you had that over-sentimentalized, over-saccharine, sugar and spice and all things that are nice attitude about children. But around about the 60s, some cracking good yarns came out. And a lot of them were published by Scholastic Book Services. There you see the chest, the illustration by Bill Russell. Scholastic are an American service, but something interesting happened in Australia with them. I think they came in the 1970s, and I think they often operated via Ashton Scholastic. They were very positively received in Australia, and they did a few different things. So students in classrooms could get these newsprint style order forms, which were distributed in school, and paperbacks were priced low enough for families to get them. So you had a lot of children that were basically ordering books off the catalogue, where they may not have been always able to get books otherwise. So you had a selection of international favourites. A lot of early Australian novels made their appearance, and of course you had international, and some of them are quite random. So with this one, you have got some fantastic illustrations by Bill Russell. And if you look at this one here, the black and white version of this is within the text. What is it about? Well, it's very much a boy's story. You've got 4 boys, with one of them's called Bill. I think our narrator is called Larry, and they live on this island, and essentially they run wild. One of the stories about children from the older books is that where were the parents? Never seem to be any adults or parents. They're just going around all over the place. And that's the case here too. So they live on Outer Island East Edge. You can see some little houses right there at the top right. But then you've got a couple of other islands. And we first enter the story when they're hanging around on one of the other islands. I think a ferry took them over, or they've got a raft or a flat-bottom boat that they row around. And one of them, Roy, ran up the slope after a young rabbit with a stick in his hand. And when the rabbit vanished into the vegetation, he started hitting the vegetation. You'd never see that written today. Trying to hit a rabbit with a stick. Oh no. Anyway, it made a hollow sound, and they found this stone. I think they mean cement, but they're calling it stone crypt. And they managed to move the lid a little bit. There's strange letters and writing on it that aren't in English. We never do find out what they are. Anyhow, the four boys run back to the mainland, and they go to their teacher, Mr. Allan, and they tell him all about it. And Mr. Allan says, oh, it's getting late tonight, but we can all go out there tomorrow. So next day, the boys turn up to Mr. Allan's cottage, but Mr. Allan disappears. They turn up to his cottage. Mr. Allan has disappeared. And then for a few days they don't have any school teacher and no one knows where he's gone, etc., etc. So here you've got that beautiful cover illustration, and here is the black and white version inside the book of the 4 boys getting the lid off the stone or possibly cement container. Now, at this point, when Mr. Allan has disappeared, we get a little bit more of a vision of these islands where the boys live. Apparently, it's this small village. There's a schoolroom. It has 2 rooms. It has 1 teacher, Mr. Allan, and some of the older students look out over the 2 rooms while he walks from one to the other. But there's no school teacher. There's nothing really structural. Now, I don't think this ever says where it is. There's shrimp. There's pelicans, there's lots of beautiful blue water by the sound of it, and there are hurricanes. My feeling is that this could very much be Florida Keys or that type of area, and that's purely based on the fact that I've read Jack Vance's books and he used to sail on the Florida Keys. It feels like that. I don't know, but it's never really stated. Anyhow, the next thing that happens is a big white yacht, more than a yacht really, a small ship, came into the sound and tied up among the shrimp boats. We've got a picture of that as well. It doesn't look anything like a yacht, and it's actually docked rather than out in the sound, but you've got this steam engine type boat. And the people who come off it are a shifty looking lot, and they ask for the mayor, only there isn't any mayor. There's a postmaster, and when they're speaking to the postmaster, they ask about Mr. Allan. And the postmaster, Mr. Parker, I think his name is, doesn't let on that Mr. Allan has disappeared, but they eventually figure out where his cottage is. It's all very mysterious and it's all very odd. Now, the boys, meanwhile, are trying to get back to the island, and they're also trying to investigate the white ship, so various hijinks ensue. And eventually, when they do get back to the island, they think of something that Mr. Allan always says, which is, if you find something, always dig deeper. So they do that, and they find another stone space under the top one, and in it is a chest. And here is a picture of them digging up the mysterious iron-bound chest. By the way, the second cavity also has strange non-English writing on it. They dig it up, and they find inside a jumble of maps, but they're just half maps. They've been cut in half, and they're wrapped in oilskins. But there's also underneath them, a strange picture of a head that's all gold and yellow, and a picture of a brave face, but all a dark yellow, not only the face, but the hair, the whole head, and a strange look about the eyes. And eventually they figure it's not a picture of a person, it's a picture of a statue. Now, here's the point where they decide they need to hide it, so they take it to a cave elsewhere on the island, which they sometimes hang out in. And on the way back to their camp from there, a storm brews up, which turns out to be a hurricane. And here's a picture of them taking the chest over the island to hide it in their cave. Now, by the time the winds get really, really large and dangerous, they're away from the cave and back towards their camp, and it's all terribly heinous, and their voice is heard in the storm, and it turns out to be Mr. Allan, who's all ragged and has been hiding out on the island. Now, the boys are a bit weirded out by that. They're pleased to see him and all, but they don't instantly run into his arms. And he tells a strange story about having come from the British Museum to look for something, and that the people on the white ship are nefarious types who want to get it too. And the boys don't tell him that they've found this other chest. They don't quite trust him. Anyhow, they all survived the hurricane, huddled into an overhang under the canvas, and it's all very dire and grim and very exciting. It's very much a young boy's adventure type experience. Anyhow, after the storm, they go up to have a look over to their village of East Edge to see how it fared, and it turns out that everything is blown away and the village houses don't exist, and they're all a bit shocked and in mourning because they think something might have happened to their family. They go back to Mr. Allan's original campsite, as we see here in this fantastic illustration. The illustrations throughout are gorgeous. I would happily hang them on my wall. I've never heard of Bill Russell before, but he did a wonderful job. And then we end up with an exciting fight between the bad guys off the white ship and Mr. Allan. He's told the boys to run, and they do, but then when they see he's overmatched, they go back, and a free-for-all ensues. After that, some of the locals get involved. They like Mr. Allan, and they think he's a great guy. They don't like the fact that the people from the white ship are shooting at him and at the boys. And it turns out, of course, there's a happy ending. Who was Mr. Allan? Well, it turns out that he was indeed sent from the British Museum, and the postmaster and other people from the region confirmed that because a letter came from the British Museum for Mr. Allan, confirming that he was an archaeologist who was there to look for a thing. So the boys reveal what they actually found, and it's all very exciting. It has been saved from going to the nefarious types on the white ship, and the boys will doubtless be hearing from the British Museum in thanks. And here's a picture of them uncovering it when they actually locate the golden head. And then we have got a final picture of pelicans, because pelicans are awesome. So yeah, this is the Disappearance of Mr. Allan by Foster Kennedy. I think this is his first book. It might be the only book he wrote. It's really hard to tell. If you go online, you don't see a whole lot of information. If you go on Goodreads, if I write a review for this, I think I'll be the first. But yeah, these vintage adventure stories are fun, and they're not something that would ever be written today. They'd try to make it meet all demographics or something, but instead we've got this vision into the past when childhood was completely different to what we see today, with the level perhaps of innocence and running wild that we don't see. And perhaps it's even a memory of Foster Kennedy himself for when he was young, so it might be heralding back to an earlier time than the 1970s. Heaps of fun. If you like vintage stories, maybe try a few of the older vintage kids books if they're around. Even without the nostalgia, I never read this when I was young. I read it for the first time yesterday or the day before. So even without that, it's a pretty good yarn, and it's well written. Better written, I would argue, than some books that are being published today. So, thank you for listening. There's going to be more books by authors beginning with K. I will get you to vote on them eventually, which one you want me to read. But before I go on to too many from beginning with K, I'm going to be buddy reading Niftaline by Michael Shear with the boys over at Wheel of Genre, and that should be a really interesting discussion. So I'm looking forward to that. Thank you very much for watching, and read good books.